if you're intentionally causing harm, deriving pleasure from people's pain, lying intentionally, knowingly, pathologically. I'm not saying we have all the answers as to what happened, but she's providing conclusions, not evidence. It's all the things she's describing about herself. It's pure projection to say, who's the one who's benefited from Charlie's death? Sheer level of disingenuousness and dishonesty, while claiming everyone else is lying and traitors when she's possibly the biggest traitor I've ever seen in terms of loyalty and to sets of ideas and values. Is evil, definitively evil. Welcome back to
Ami's house.
Michael, the State of the Union is upon us. We're going to unpack it here today. Should I leave the little bobblehead the whole episode?
Leave it.
How are we doing?
Where'd you get that?
I have about 1,000 of them. I have so many all over my house.
You invested in them?
Yeah, exactly. Somebody might have handed it to me at some event. Hey, I have a present. Hey, Mr. Trump. And I was like, oh, it's so great. Look at the little bobble. We're doing great. Made in America. Bobble weave, bobblehead. Yeah. State of the Union.
Do you have an impression of the way Trump will say something and then look to the side?
Yes.
He does every time. More of his body. Is more of his body in it? Maybe I'm making it up.
Yeah.
He knows how to break for applause. That guy,
after a State of the Union, there's a very particular type of Trump impression that like really cooks for me, because it's kind of, there's always the bombastic, crazy, whatever, but the State of the Union is much more relaxed, and and there's crazy people, and they're going nuts for me. They're going so nuts for me. And it's a lot more relaxed. And he's older and he's aging and it's calm. And for years and years, our great country has stood on the hilltops of the mountaintops of a great civilization. It's words he doesn't usually use. It's much more sophisticated. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Much more sophisticated.
He really has a captive audience and like really, really exploits it.
He plays it
like,
well.
You people aren't going anywhere,
I think you get a sense when you watch it, right? Just, oh yes, Trump won this round, kind of won at life a little bit. You know what I mean? Like it took you back a year when you're watching it to that like 2024 moment, and they just have to sit there. The Democrats just have to sit there and take it and they can't look happy and cheer and play ball, because that would be a big betrayal, right, to the team. But they can't. They have to look sad, which also makes them look pretty pathetic.
There was a waitress who was brought in to like celebrate, no income tax on tips. Yes. And she stood up, and everyone stood up except for this very large woman sitting next to her. And I couldn't tell if that woman just didn't feel like standing or it was like a protest sit. But it was like, she's a waitress who saved money. Can't we all clap for that?
Did you see those moments where he's like, they won't stand for that? These people are crazy.
Yeah.
You guys, and you can see them torn, because if they try to there's no solution for the Democrats to look good. He just spanks them, and they have to sit there. And if they look like sourpuss about it, they look really pathetic. And if they clap and play along, I don't know. Like, I think they should stand for the obvious things.
He had a moment. I mean, talking about like looking pathetic, he was like, this country used to be dead, but now we're the hottest country. We are the hottest country right now. And like, what are we watching?
Well, you haven't seen a lot of State of the Unions from Trump.
We're breaking all the records in the book. Hottest country. I don't watch that much of him. That's right. True. So I'm still kind of shocked when I see these types of things.
Oh, interesting. Well, yeah, I wasn't surprised by if it shocked you, if it's your first State of the Union Trumpian style, it's different than the usual. We're so hot, it's unbelievable. We're so hot. People are turning themselves on so much. They're watching us. They're getting turned on. Turned on like you've never seen. And that's the Trump show. And that's how he's always done it. It's just that this time, just watching the Democrats sit there have to take it. It reminded me of like when he was inaugurated, and they have to just sit and take it.
But speaking of them taking it and him having a moment of victory, did it feel a little divorced from the actual facts on the ground with, and you may take issue with this, but how unpopular he's become and how, how much kind of hot water he's in for the Epstein files and, sort of everything going on. And he's just sort of up there celebrating as if it is last year, as if he does have this mandate and he's taking a victory lap. It feels like it's not the time for a victory lap for him.
No.
I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Okay. So I hear what you're saying. That's why I was like, oh, like this is how it's going to be. This is how he's going to play it. And he can sort of, for the moment, present like he did a year ago with that golden age vibe. Right. And sort of did feel a little detached from, I guess, perception of how things seem to be going, where the chaos in the streets, the ICE incidences, the ICE incidents of people, of them protesters who were killed by ICE, the U.S. on the brink of war with Iran. I mean, he obviously spun those things as displays of American strength and that we're not someone to mess with, and I'm honoring my promises and commitments. So I think he took the angle of, just say what you want. If his was the perception and the reality is the reality, or what's out there is perception and what Trump was presenting is closer to reality in terms of where things actually landed. I'm sure it's somewhere in the middle. But I'd say it was sort of a reminder of that feeling in that sense. But again, if I'm having my critical hat on and critical lens on, there's certain things he's saying where you're just like, this is fun, but is it good? Is it good? Is it healthy? Is he playing into some dark impulses here? It's fun. It's entertaining. Now let's pack that aside, because we have plenty of entertainers in the world. And what do we want from the president, right? When we hear the State of the Union, it's fun when he goes, look, these people are crazy. Now, the thing that I always ask myself is, there's a lot of desire on certain factions and politically to always condemn Trump for all these behaviors. But I also look at it more macro and say, like, he's playing into things that are a reaction to like years and years of Democratic dominance, certain policies that Trump is speaking to, and his reaction may be unsavory and inartful, but it's a reaction. And so who's responsible for all this? Is it all Trump's fault, this kind of behavior that's, going into darker places or playing into sort of ugly impulses? Or is it also really bad Democratic policy that led to this, that led to something like this being appealing? I think you have to ask both questions. What are your thoughts?
Yeah,
we can get into
and I know, and I think last year it felt appropriate, and now it's like, well, now you've been president for a year, like reaction time is over. Now the reaction is actually coming back the other way, So yes, I do agree that it started as a reaction, but now it's sort of time to show, okay, so now you're in power. What do you want to do? And that the tone of "we'll show you" is a little bit feels a little bit outdated.
So let's get to some examples of that, because I don't want to, at the risk of sounding like a woke libtard, I'm nowhere near that. People know where I am politically. They know where you are.
No, you're not. No,
I'm not. No, but look, the moment I know that's going to get clipped up and talked about is when he's talking about Minnesota. Things turned into this is where it turned from just like, I'm awesome, things are awesome, things are great. And then it turns to like, okay, now we're going to talk some it's going to get edgy. It's going to get serious here. When he brought up Minnesota and talks about these Somalis coming in, and then the camera pans to Ilhan Omar, just fixate on her face, making us as an audience watch her face, watch this. The president talk about Somalis and name them as a group, Somalis. And I'm watching her face, and look, I got no love for Ilhan Omar at all, but I'm also seeing there's something, he's saying that's resonating, and it also plays into icky stuff that, we've been talking about as Jews, that if you lay the format this way in this sort of tribalistic, nativistic sense, rather than focusing on, crime and values and things like that, but you play into those things and slip in, this kind of language, group identity, you're really towing that line, and I think it plays into some icky, dangerous, dark impulses that people are cheering for. And I got my eyes open a little more sensitive to that, I'll be honest, in a post-October 7th world. At the end of the day, I do think there is an argument to be made about cultures that come into your society and when you have open borders and not a sense of pride in your culture and society, not based on race, but based on values and ideas. And if people are antithetical to those ideas, you have to name those things. And I think you do have to name them precisely. But there's that danger of inviting people into that tent that don't share the same point of view, that have nefarious intentions. So I'm watching it with a little bit of a refined lens. Talk to me.
I got two things. One, I was watching it on YouTube. I actually don't know what like feed I was watching, but it was the cameraman's or the director's choice while he was talking about Somalis to focus for a very, very long time on Ilhan Omar and her reaction. Like I don't know if he was looking at her or not, but that was like a funny interplay that the studio chose to do. So I'm not sure how antagonistic it was supposed to be.
Of course, they're like, get her face, get her, zoom in. Some people did something, and now I'm upset. I cannot believe this. Yeah,
everything you're saying, I bet you in 2016, people were saying about the way Trump talked about Mexicans, the same exact sentences coming out of your mouth. Saying he's dog whistling to the darkest impulses in American culture. And this is not going to lead anywhere good.
I don't like the word.
That was their problem with him.
Yeah, I don't like the term. I don't like dog whistle, because dog whistle means he's actually looking to these nefarious people and saying, I want you to be part of this tent. And I agree with your points of view about race, or, I don't think so. I think there's opportunists who are racist or really are divisive, in it for the wrong reasons, that easily sneak under the cover of this kind of language. I don't think Trump is dog whistling to them, wink, wink, or agrees with them, because when push comes to shove, I think as we've seen in Trump's presidency, when push comes to shove and they come up against each other, he casts them out. He said, I'm not talking about neo-Nazis and white supremacists. They should be condemned totally. And when it comes to Israel, when it comes to Jews or anti-Semites or racists, he doesn't really have love for them. They don't, and in turn, in Trump's victory, they don't have love for him. But in that charged environment, I think it is important. Clarity is important, and the balance between clarity and sensitivity to how other people can, take advantage of the climate. When you speak that way, just speaking in terms of groups and collective identities completely when you're talking about something bad. I guess in certain cases it's more appropriate if it's more accurate to describe a situation that way. But I think you can make the same point without the potential risk of inviting bad actors into the room.
I fully, I agree with you. Yeah, it was a little startling to hear him say Somali specifically, because there were more polite ways and less, what's the right word for it? I don't know. Less confrontational ways to have that same conversation during the State of the Union.
Yeah. I also think it's that what it does is, if you collectivize the guilt, like, it makes it harder to, I think, get people to see a good point you're making. Whether it's other Somalis who have nothing to do with it, they might feel attacked by a line that's not geared at them, just in the way people say Jews, generally speaking. I'm saying, but certainly so. But I and even the way people talk about, on the right, the way they describe African Americans and crime, and they want to talk about gang violence. But there's ways to have the conversation and be accurate without using such collective language that you cast people out who would otherwise very much hear a good point about problems within particular communities or cultures, Right. So I don't know. Trump's obviously not the guy for that, but I wouldn't want to risk accuracy for political correctness, And I just think it's a very, in the climate that we exist in now, where people are so proudly racist and anti-Semitic online, and they use these right-wing conservative victories to push their actual bad agendas, which I think will cause the right to lose in the end. That is where the moment is, and there's the opposite extreme of that is, Obama or Clinton not mentioning radical Islamic terrorism and just saying everyone commits, it's all terrorism, white people commit terrorism, and just kind of obfuscating and blinding people from a real problem. That would be the opposite extreme. Where that exact line is, I don't know, but couple of caveats in there I think can help. It helps the message more, as opposed to just, it's not about people's feelings. It's actually about making sure your actual message of immigration and enforcing immigration against violent criminals and people who want to undermine your culture and society is effective and received.
You know what I really like? I love a great celebration tour. I think of like when Rubashkin was released from prison, he went on like a 6-month long celebration tour where everywhere he went was a party.
Okay.
And watching the U.S. men's hockey team win the gold and just spend 2 weeks partying and being lifted on everyone's shoulders in every single room they walk into, including the State of the Union, is so nice to see.
That, yeah, the little shift. I think so. When they walked in and it just kept going, I think the reason the cheers kept going is people were like, we're agreeing on one thing.
Yeah.
Let's keep it going. Please. This is nice. It's unified. It's unanimous. Who could not love a U.S. men's hockey team beating Canada? It's great. Let's all cheer and keep extra cheering. That was nice. That was a nice moment.
It was also a reminder that, because, it was a large group of young men from like, different places in the country, like probably all, parents with similar, but like different backgrounds and political views.
Yeah.
Just like coming into the room and reminding us that this is a country of human beings and not just politicians who will or will not stand for each other. And for the most part, I think most normal people are like, yeah, the president's fine, whatever, they're not that heated up about it.
There is a thing with State of the Unions, though, where the people in the audience are certain props for certain things. And you could tell some people are very proud to be on camera and featured. And some people are like, please take this off me. Remember, he posted this one girl who was like, they forced her to transition. They wouldn't tell her parents. Look at her now. God, the damage it was done. The damage that was done to you. God, look. He didn't say it like that, but it's like zooming in. Oh, they did terrible things to her. They really made her so ugly. Look at nasty what they did to that face. Oh, it used to, it's just, it could go. He doesn't say that, but it could go so awry. And the camera's on this person who's like, please stop. I'm here, okay? And he's like, they wouldn't tell their parents? My God, it was so awful. My God, the hormones, the post-operations, what they're doing to... And then the camera's on this person. Please stop.
The waitress had the same thing where she was like, I'm happy I saved money, but like my life's dream was not to be a waitress and like, be applauded at the State of the Union for my job as a waitress. Like, happy to be here, but I like, let's move on.
Right. It's so funny because in those moments, there's this weird aura where the president could say anything and make anything happen, and it would just have to happen. He'd be like, give the guy a steak. Can we bring him a cooked steak? Put him a rib steak in his hand. He's a great soldier. He was in the Philippines. Give him another steak. That would be my sketch. Put him up on your shoulders. Let's bring him around. Give him a steak. Let's wipe him down in butter. Come on. Let's take his shirt off. Look at this body. Like he has that.
Well, that's it. It felt like it was going that way. He's like, well, I have a surprise for you. We are getting you a brand new car. You're getting a brand new car and a house in the city of your choosing.
He was a game show host. If you look under your seats, not the Democrats, and they could look under because they're not getting up. They're not even getting up at all. Look under your seats, folks. A free trip to Grenada. We're all going.
There are buses outside waiting.
When he turns to the Democrats, every time he goes, not going to stand for that one, huh? Not going to stand. It's just so like, what are they going to do? The guy won. He's got 3 years left. What are you going to? That's the aura I'm feeling. Like, oh God, like whatever. Go back to the beginning of what we spoke about. Whatever the perceptions are out there of craziness, and he's losing control, or it's chaos, or he's unpopular in certain circles, or increasingly losing that. In this moment, he could just turn and say, "I'm still the president. Nothing you can do." You know what I mean? That was the vibe from the Democrats. Tim. Back to the Olympics that you spoke about. Let's move to that. To that, we were discussing an interesting tweet. Can we pull that up? Do you have it handy of a tweet regarding the winning the person who scored the winning goal for the Olympics, Mr. Jack Hughes.
Yes, sir.
Jack Hughes.
Sir,
let's pull up the tweet, and we're going to react to this a little bit because our friend Piers Morgan, by the way, Noah Tishby writes, Jewish hockey player Jack Hughes scores the game-winning goal to win Olympic gold for Team USA. And Piers Morgan writes, American hockey player. Who cares what religion he adheres to? Okay. Now, a couple things. Let's just say this about Pierce. It's very interesting, his random selection of who he decides to nod to in the culture, right? If it had said Muslim hockey player so-and-so scores the winning goal, would he ever in his right mind correct that? And if somebody said exactly his response, he would have condemned them Why would you condemn his religion just because he's a Muslim hockey player? That's just as much an American as anybody. Why should he have had to write American? Like, Piers is capable of both those points of view based on his like positions completely. And what he likes to do and in that tweet is very obvious. Like, I think I'll nod to the woke rights team now and just go, boom. Anyone who's tried to, put Jews in this other special category, I'm going to give a nod to those people. And then every once in a while, he'll give a nod to the left to let him know, I won't be liked by everybody. Now, look, I appreciate the things he does on a show and the debates he has. He has good conversations, and I've sung his praises when necessary and appropriate. But like, this is a repeated thing that he does of the nodding to both sides. Like me, pro-Israel. What Israel's doing is totally justified from a terrorist attack, and they've gone too far. And it's just always moving between the sides. So it kind of makes sense that he would respond that way. I'm never surprised.
I agree that he's a two-faced bastard, but I actually think he's right about this one.
Oh, interesting. Go.
I think that, and we talked about it. So tell me if I'm stepping on a point that you made to us you made privately. But if we're gonna say that when Hannah Einbinder speaks as a Jew against Gaza, and when Jeffrey Epstein is criticized as a Jew for the awful things he did, and then we respond, well, how can you speak as a Jew? What is your relationship to Jewish heritage and tradition and the Jewish future and the Jewish people? And and Jeffrey Epstein's ethnicity has nothing to do with it. Has nothing to do with being Jewish. Then when Jack Hughes, who I would not have known ever that he's Jewish. I've never heard him speak about it. Maybe he's Jewish. I don't know. I don't know. Calling out his Judaism when we do something good, I think feels a little bit inconsistent. Right. Jack, what is your relationship to the Jewish people in Israel and the Jewish future? How can you represent Jews on the ice?
Right. I think the whole point that you're making is valid in that, we don't want to be a buzzkill. I like the idea of being proud. I like the idea of it, of Jewish pride and somebody who's a Jewish hockey player who scores that and wanting to have a moment where against so much like hatred and vitriol against Jews, like to have something like this you can celebrate. That's very tempting. But it's also important to note that, the fact that he happens to be Jewish and we want to put that as a front and center thing when we don't do the same thing when it's somebody who's, speaking out against Israel or is certainly just happens to be Jewish person with other points of view that we find problematic. If we want to make the claim that being Jewish is much more than just happens to be by birth. It's not just some ethnic or racial designation. You're born into it and it means that there's so much more to it than that. If we want to make that case, which we constantly make, then celebrating somebody who happens to be Jewish and putting that front and center as his identity, whether they did or not, can risk undermining that. Because like you said, if Norman Finkelstein or what is it, Hannah Einbinder,
yeah,
or any of these people, they come out,
example.
Or Dave Smith, or use their Jewish identity to provide cover to say as a Jew, and then we ask the question, well, what does Jewish identity even mean to you? Do you care about Jewish continuity, identity, safety, culture, religion, ritual? Any of these Jewish Voice for Peace activists who come out and the only time they speak out against Israel, the only time they use their Jewish identity or it means something to them is to undermine and speak out against Israel. We kind of disqualify the claim, not to say they're not technically Jewish, but that's all that they are is technically Jewish, and it's not that significant to what they're saying. And in his case, it's nice that he's technically Jewish, but we put that front and center, and it kind of risks undermining the idea that this is much more than just an ethnic designation, a racial designation.
I think that it's great that he's Jewish. I was happy to see that he's Jewish. It makes me feel proud and happy and excited. But I think for Noah Tishby, who's making a living off of advocating for Israel and in this space, I think consistency is important. And it was fair for Piers to call her out. I
can't go as far as agreeing with Piers because
it'd be great.
I can't go as far as agreeing with Piers just because I think, well, in a sense, what was going on behind that question is just so mistaken in the sense Piers is the one who applies that standard differently to any other case. African-American hockey player scores African-American, woman gets assaulted. A woman in Britain gets assaulted by such a woman, Britain. Muslim student gets awarded this Muslim American. Like he doesn't do that in other cases. And he kind of does that here. And I just find I'm not necessarily assuming his motives or anything like that. It's just an obvious, strange departure from your usual stance. So I can't go into agreeing with him on that. Dude. But But my point is, yes, we're constantly trying to explain how just being born Jewish and then having no real connection to your Jewish identity, Jewish life, or filling it with any sort of meaning, it makes it hard for you to qualify to speak on behalf of the Jewish community and care about Jewish values and things like that. And we're making that case that it's not just not just a technical designation.
Like if and when Dan Senor scores the winning goal in an Olympic hockey game,
right?
Jewish hockey player wins the gold.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, it's possible. It's possible. I think he's a good skater.
I think he's working on it.
He's working on it. We'll get there.
All right. Speaking of other,
call me back.
Nadav, Khabib, I did it.
That would be a moment.
Nadav Ayal comes running on ice.
And call me back. He's done it again. Every time he scores a goal. Call me back. A Jewish American Dan Senor scored the winning goal for the Olympics. He kind of looks like a retired hockey player when you think about it.
You and I know so little about hockey. It's so hard to joke about what an announcer would say.
Right. Touchdown, Dan Senor.
Point for the team.
Yes, keep going. What's next?
Speaking of two prominent Jews in the news, yes. I want to share this clip. You might have seen it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a fan of us.
Oh, okay.
About that. Somebody sent me a clip where these guys were discussing me, and they were like, "We're fans of him, but he's always tells people that there's no hope." And I go, "I'm not saying there's no hope. He's telling people they can't have a good life." I said, "I've never said that. I've never said that." If you look at the news right now and you're overwhelmed with a sense of hope, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, like, honestly, if you read the news right now and hope is the first word that comes into your mind, I'm confused. That's all I would say. I'm not trying to spread negativity here. The show is literally me reacting to what's going on in the world. And if you think what's going on in the world, like, I get it. We're run by a cabal of satanic pedophiles. There's tremendous wealth inequality. We have a technocracy that's built autonomous drone armies, but you can still have a good life. I get it. I'm not telling you can't have a good life.
Dillon, if you listen, he goes on for the next 20 minutes almost talking about these two guys.
Yeah.
And he quotes something I said directly. Tim Dillon is 100% talking about me and Ami in this clip. It has almost 1 million views, 977,000 views.
The episode, but
the episode. We'll put the link in the show notes.
Yeah.
But Tim Dillon watched last week's episode and talked about us.
Yeah.
100% it's us, no doubt.
Yep. Somebody sent me a clip of these two guys, and look, and he keeps saying, they're nice guys. They're fans of the show. God bless them. They're fans of the show. The thing I found interesting.
We're not joking, by the way. I'm being totally serious. It actually is us.
Yeah. Tim Dillon reacted to a clip of us from our podcast where we spoke about him. And what was nice about it was, I think it compelled him to clarify his positions more than anything else. I think there's the kind of different things that when you're in this space, like most of the time people just ignore what you're saying and you're not that relevant. Fine. I accept that. That's just what it is when you're on the way up. But as you're building, most of the time people aren't paying attention. But the worst thing that can happen is somebody pays attention and gets what you're saying wrong, right? And like completely misunderstands your point. What I liked about Tim's reaction to us is that I think he didn't misrepresent what we were saying. I think he was incorrect with the conclusions he drew about it. But I think he took it seriously enough that he felt compelled to correct his position, that he's not just a doom and gloom person that is telling people not to have a good life. But to correct against what he said in response to us, I think the big thing he missed from us was we agree with him that observationally, his observations look like you can paint a picture in which you watch the news and you say we're controlled by these elements and these things that are out of your control, these powerful elites, and the way he looks at the world in terms of elites and non-elites. But prescriptively, he doesn't offer much in terms of the prescription. That in spite of those things we were saying, in spite of those things, you've been able to build an audience for yourself, not to discredit you, in spite of an elite Hollywood ring that exists out there that's gatekeeping or whatever it may be, you've been able to do that yourself, and plenty of people can build lives for themselves. And that's the prescription that if all these things disappeared that you're perceiving, we think incorrectly, whether it's AIPAC or Israel's involvement in the U.S., and to the extent that you determine that that's nefarious or malicious. We don't. But either way, that's not the cause of the problems that you're trying to thread and say that it is. That if those things disappeared, if we stopped funding Israel tomorrow, if AIPAC disappeared, all the same problems you're talking about in America would still be there. And there's a different prescription involved with solving them. That's the main thing. Not that your observations aren't there.
Right. Yeah. I'd also say, I mean, I have a few things to say. You know, I mean, he mentioned like you were about to go to war with Iran. Your lens is very tragic and pessimistic. Mm-hmm. Us going to war with Iran doesn't necessarily need to be seen as this like doom and gloom world end thing. I mean, listen to Elika Laban talk. It could be this very hopeful, amazing thing that's about to happen. And I know if you heard me say that, you would joke, oh yeah, going to Iran is amazing. How amazing can it be? Like I already hear the Tim Dillon comedy of that. Mm-hmm. But I think it's worth pointing out. I would also say I've been a very avid Tim Dillon listener since like 2018. Mm-hmm. I think he shaped a lot of the way I think in a lot of ways. And I would say it hasn't helped me very much. Like his worldview, I think I've had to fight against the skepticism and cynicism that I've learned from him. So just practically speaking, I think it's funny, but I don't really think it's helpful. And then to wrap that all up, I'd say Tim Dillon's an artist and he has a voice and a worldview that's funny. Mm-hmm. What's happened is that artist who does comedy now has a weekly show where he offers sort of like a worldview and his take on everything from economics to personal life. And although maybe the point is not to get personal advice from him, that's how people are. Mm-hmm. And when those two things are mixed, when like you have to go from here's what I find funny about the world, and here's also, you know, how you should live your life in a certain way. Although it's not that direct, I think that's where things get muddled. I think as a comedian and artist, it's brilliant and genius and he shouldn't stop. He should go even further. But as like a podcast host who, whether or not you want to be taken seriously, you are taken seriously. I think it starts to cross into that Jon Stewart territory where you need to take a little bit of responsibility for the way you're shaping young people's minds and attitudes, not as an artist, but as an influential voice in their life. Yeah, I don't know.
I will say a few things to that. I think we're forgetting that at the time when most of Tim Dillon's sort of comedic satirical takes back in 2018, like were aimed in a certain direction, you know, against like left-wing absurdity and even some of the elite powerful structures, which were dominated by the Democrats and the left. And he was this refreshing voice, sort of center right. You know, certainly didn't bother us. It provides a certain catharsis. I didn't take it as a prescription on how to live life or as advice, but the comedy was such a catharsis. And then when it started to when it started to just go awry in areas where we disagreed, then I think it becomes like troubling, because it still has the sharp wit to it, but I think the main point behind it is incorrect or misguided. Mm-hmm. So I always take it that it was when you said it didn't help you, I mean, the catharsis it provided back then was wonderful. I thought it was great. I think you're just saying that you have to shift to the extent to which, it orients.
Well, here's what I'm saying. I know he's not getting in front of a mic in order to tell people how to live, obviously. Yeah. But when you get in front of a mic and do a show consistently, I listen to the Patreon too. So you're listening to someone twice a week for many, 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 many years. You're influencing how that person thinks to a degree that's different than getting on stage and putting out a comedy special once a year.
Yes.
You know, it's different. And whether or not you intend to shape people's minds and their worldview and the way they think or not, you are. That's sort of the industry you're in. That's why people come back to you every week, because they like the way you think and want to return to it each week. And so it's I don't think it's prescriptive, but practically speaking, you're having that effect on people, whether or not you intend to or not.
Sure. I just mean at the end of the day, it seems generic and obvious to say, but he said at the end, and we disagree. We have disagreements. Like, this is his opinion, and it's gone this way, and you take it for what that is, right? I think. Are you just saying that because you know how effective and persuasive that is on people, that when when he gets it wrong, it like concerns you? That voice is now so popular and amplified and out there, but
No, well,
keep in mind also when you were listening to him in the early days, it was even less of a big show. It was like more niche audience. So now it's even more bigger. And
I wasn't really having a take there. I'm just saying, like, I absorbed his comedy in a way that it affected my own worldview. Like I think happens when you absorb any artist's work. Yeah. But you absorb it consistently and frequently over many, many years. I don't really have a take. I'm just saying that voice in my head got stronger and stronger and stronger, to a point where I had to start fighting against it and start being less cynical and less skeptical. Cause I'm like, I am not the owner of the Tim Dillon show. I'm not making money on how cynical I am. You know, like he is. That's good for Tim Dillon. It's funny. Right. I need to kind of amp that down a little bit for myself in order to move forward. I'm not saying as a take. I'm just saying observationally that's the effect he's had.
But my question to you is, and we're getting into the weeds on this. Wasn't it the fact that he was getting Israel, in our opinion, very wrong, and the whole thing that not just the cynicism in general, but
it's not. It's not just. I think the cynicism. I mean, if we're going to get kind of esoteric, I think the cynicism is sort of it's the engine at the root of a lot of his comedy. Mm-hmm. And I think if you really dissected it and analyzed it, you could, I think that could explain why he's so popular now. Mm-hmm. And I think that cynicism has bled into his point of view on the Israel-Gaza war. Mm-hmm. And I think you could probably connect it to the same thing Candace Owens is doing and Piers Morgan is doing and Dave Smith is doing. Like, I think there's a rawness to it that is antithetical to sort of like forward liberal progress, like real liberal progress. And it's like, yeah, I mean, yeah, like I think this is going to sound really off the rails. I think there's like an evilness in it. There's like there's a darkness in it. There's a darkness in it
is a better
that
word.
Isn't good. Right. Yeah. There's a darkness in it that's not, I don't think, good for culture or society.
I guess I would say it depends. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. I mean, it depends, I guess, on what's needed. If you know what I mean. I think the darkness, evil is, I think, too loaded a word. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah,
and also, I'll
take that back.
And we'll get to Candace at the end of this episode. I wouldn't put him and Candace in the same boat. I think nihilism, cynicism, those kind of things, in the face of like what's going on out there in the world, if it like keeps contributing to it, I can understand. I mean, obviously, I think his angle is, giving his takes and observations in a funny, digestible way that's but provides a certain amount of catharsis. And I think in a certain cultural context, it was very effective, impactful, and to me, it hit a really good chord when he was going up against that in sort of 2018, 2019. Yeah. And it was really effective. I think now maybe I don't know. For me, it's about the issues. It's just like you're using that lens that you were really effective at, kind of sifting through the bullshit on the far left. And I think you're using a framework of looking through the world as elites, those in power and those not in power, and superimposing that onto what's going on with Bibi, Trump, Israel, Gaza, when I just think the stakes are very different and the conditions are very different. Yeah. And I think that's I think a lot of people get Tim wrong, and like they go to anti-Semitism and all these kinds of things. And it's not that. I think it's just looking at the world through elites and not elites, and those in the room, in control, in power, and those not. And you eventually arrive at weird patterns of anti-Semitism, I think pretty unintentionally, but it gets you there because of Jewish representation in business or politics or things like that. I don't think that's the first goal, to expose it as a Jewish thing. He tries to say that. I appreciated the fact that he had clarified his position and responded to that. I'm not talking about Jewish people. I'm talking about the powerful governments. He's talking about governments, Israel, elites, that kind of thing, and the intersection of those things. But at the end of the day, I just think, for me at least, I wasn't even as avid a listener as you are going back in that sort of deep way in terms of how I think. I just think his comedic lens is a little bit shallow on this stuff. Like when he says, when war with Iran, that's obviously bad, or things that are obviously bad. And it's just like, you're so, kind of making presumptions.
I would actually, wait, can I jump in? I would say his comedic lens on it is perfectly fine, but that's not the right lens to start analyzing geopolitics. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. That's another way to say what you were saying and I was saying before. Like, it's a great comedic lens. You should write a book about boomers and you should analyze American culture. No one understands it better than you. When you start going into Middle Eastern geopolitics, that lens breaks down, and you wouldn't know it unless you actually know more than he does about Middle Eastern geopolitics. But if you do, you see it for yourself.
Yeah, this is the whole thing with you in the commentariat. If you're a commentator comedian, and then the lines blur between I'm making a joke here and doing shtick, and then giving a real take, and to what point you should take it seriously or not. But hey, always happy to continue the discussion. The invitation's on the table. That could be a nice way to air disagreements. I appreciate him reacting and taking it seriously enough to talk about it.
I was so happy he didn't just murder us. Oh my God. Okay, speaking of murderers.
Oh God.
Alleged murderers. God.
So on this thing, the latest in the Candace Owens universe, she puts out a trailer. I guess we should play a clip of it so people see what's going on. I mean, it's all kind of predictable, but she's doing the work of her biggest critics for her, if you ask me, because she has put out a trailer, an expose on Erica Kirk, the person that no one said she was going after. Certainly Megyn Kelly said she hasn't talked about her at all. Oh, of course not. She would never go after. The person she said is one of the two people that could get Candace to stop was her husband and Erica Kirk. So let's watch this trailer over here, Michael.
Let's see. It's at over 1 million views now.
All right, let's check.
Came out today.
Mm-hmm.
Trump says that Kirk has died after he was shot from a nearby building.
After being shot at Utah Valley University.
The great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead.
The cries of this widow will echo around the world like a battle cry.
I didn't even get to give him a kiss goodbye.
That young man, I forgive him.
Take your time.
Erica Kirk has been named the new CEO of Turning Point USA.
My husband's dead. I'm not trying to be morbid, but he's dead.
It's weird to say excited.
Describes her husband's funeral as the event of the century. Merch, hats.
We have 50,000 plus hat orders.
Nobody knows why she's out there in a glittering pantsuit in a recreated tent that her husband tragically was murdered in, throwing merch out.
Everyone grieves differently, so if someone's acting weird, don't read into that.
Zionists, the Prime Minister of Israel, all lied through their teeth about Charlie Kirk.
Her operation was in Constanta, the epicenter of Romania's trafficking scandal.
Weird conversations to have with a 15-year-old. I'm going to touch your butt. $8.6 million to their own shell company. What is going on?
We have nothing to hide. My aunt used to tell me, never do something that you don't want on the front page of a newspaper.
Hey, Michael, I wonder how Dave Smith and Tim Dillon feel about being included in that edit. I do wonder if that's the association they want to have. I know they've cozied up to Candace in friendly spaces and even on her descent into madness. But I wonder, is that the train they still want to be on? Because I feel like there's a big thing going on online, which is like, get off the train! It's headed towards the cliff. And I don't know, what's your take on watching something like that? Keep in mind, this is the widow of Charlie Kirk, who had to watch her husband get murdered live on television, on the internet, in front of thousands of people, raising his children. She's the widow, and this is the person Candace claimed to be doing all this for initially, and that she was the only person who could tell her to stop. That Megyn Kelly told Ben Shapiro. She hasn't said anything about Erica Kirk. What are you talking about? And here we are, predictably, months later, with the latest provocation, a trailer depicting her as the villain.
I thought about the day Charlie was assassinated and how for 24 hours there was some common, decency.
Grief and decency.
Yeah, well, there's grief there, but there was decency too of okay, we got to bring the temperature down. Let's remember what we're really doing here.
Not from Candace.
And how far, no, even from her.
No.
For 24 hours? No, what did she do in the first 24 hours? Tell me.
Well, within the days, a day or so, she's making content saying, I don't know, something doesn't feel right. Starting the process of chipping away at the narrative and that something else is going on. And within a week, she's talking about 12 Israeli cell phones being present. It started almost instantly. I mean, she had an episode where she cried about it, but it started almost instantly. And then eventually chipping away at this game of provocation and endless self-aggrandizement, we arrive at Erica Kirk, chief villain, the widow of Charlie. Say what you want about, judging how Turning Point is handling all these different things. I mean, the fact that Israel and all these things are being like spoken about, you realize like it's all made up, completely made up. It's all based on lies from her that she started and manufactured. And there's all of these people who claim to be friends of Charlie, friends of Erica, love them dearly, from Tucker Carlson, who said Erica, who I love, by the way. He also said Candace, who I love, by the way. And it's like, wow, you're doing all your biggest critics a huge favor, I'd say, to Candace. And like, you know, Megyn Kelly tried to give her an off-ramp and say, you know, she hasn't gone after Erica. I tried to work behind the scenes. There's good and there's evil, and just an abundance of cowards who won't clearly speak out against this because they're afraid of losing audience. The entanglements, I guess, that Candace had in these relationships. I don't know if she has dirt on people, but it's just unbelievable. This is as wicked and evil as it gets to me.
Why is it so here? So taking for a moment that Erica Kirk does strike people as odd, and her behavior has struck people as strange. Like she's not the most sympathetic character. And I've heard a lot of people say that. People who are not, obviously don't think that Israel assassinated anybody. Why, what, how, I don't know. How would you articulate why it's so evil?
Candace making a trailer to try to depict Erica Kirk and Turning Point as being behind the murder of Charlie with zero evidence.
Yeah.
The person
I want to hear you explain it.
The person who probably is in the most amount of personal pain, raising his children, widowed, left with a huge organization to try to manage and a massive legacy to try to preserve, to make her the person who's the target and the suspect with zero evidence, making up lies about meetings in the Hamptons, a meeting I was at that she completely lied about the nature and way the meeting played out, misrepresenting, lying about all of his close friends and relationships as the prime suspects, the people who grieved Charlie's death the most and closest to him in his concentric circles, and not the people celebrating his death.
No, but before you didn't want me to use the word evil, and I understand why. Why is this pure evil, and why isn't this just cruel and mean and false and awful and humiliating? Why is it evil?
I guess we're going into semantics here. Cruel, evil, wrong, and evil. I think it's sinister. I think it's sinister. That's a word you didn't
want me to use before with Tim, but you want to use it with Candace, and I want to know why.
I think if you're intentionally causing harm, deriving pleasure from people's pain, lying intentionally, knowingly, pathologically, and deriving and all for gain, clicks, audience, to play out a drama that you have no evidence for. You know, like we said, she's bounced from one insane claim to the other with nothing verified. No one holds her to with people not holding her to account. I mean, people are getting off the train to derive pleasure out of possibly one of the most gruesome, awful displays of violence we've seen in history. You know, to see somebody brutally murdered by somebody that turned themselves in for the crime. I'm not saying we have all the answers as to what happened, but she's providing conclusions, not evidence. She's just putting lies out into the world without evidence to all of a sudden frame all those who worked with Charlie and his own wife, who had to go through that, as the target and the subject of people's, that should be the target of people's ire. It's all the things she's describing about herself. It's pure projection to say, who's the one who's benefited from Charlie's death? Who's the one who's made episodes and content and clicks and drama and attention to siphon off all the attention from the grief of Charlie to make it about herself? She did that to people who were grieving his death within the week of his death. People like Seth Dillon, who were close with Charlie. He was at the meeting in the Hamptons. I was there. Charlie asked Seth to speak. They were saying Seth was there to antagonize and pressure Charlie and threaten him and call him something. Charlie asked Seth to speak at the meeting. He said, Seth, would you like to say a few words? Everybody was getting along. They had close relationships. Sure, there was disagreements. That's what healthy people have. And for her to turn this with zero evidence to create a drama for her own self-aggrandizement and deriving pleasure out of that, lying, the sheer level of disingenuousness and dishonesty, while claiming everyone else is lying and traitors when she's possibly the biggest traitor I've ever seen in terms of loyalty and to sets of ideas and values, is evil, definitively evil.
Good.
This isn't like other people who are just
good answer.
Tim, Dave. I mean, there's people who have given takes about things. They're wrong about things. They play into certain impulses, maybe because they're sarcastic or cynical. Cynical is not the same thing. This is really going after. People are judging Erica Kirk. I mean, don't you think people are being a little bit harsh on what she's had to? Who else has gone through anything comparable like that? most widows.
Lincoln's Mary Todd Lincoln.
Nah, she didn't have to. She didn't have to manage. Mary Todd Lincoln.
Jackie Kennedy.
Can you imagine if people turned on Jackie Kennedy in that moment?
I wanted to hear you articulate it.
I'm just saying, what would we? I guess that's a good. You said Jackie Kennedy. That's what would we make of a person who immediately after JFK head was blown off in front of his wife as she went over his body, said to her, it made her the prime suspect and started making exposés on her. I mean, this is just pure. It's pure evil.
Yeah, and there's
pure evil.
I mean, she hasn't provided any proof whatsoever. I think it'd be very different if she could provide any shred of proof besides just weird accusations she's making. To answer your first question,
I guess that would change everything if anything she said at all was true.
I think you explained yourself well. Mm-hmm. To answer your first question, I think Dave Smith is probably a little bit embarrassed and maybe panicking a tiny bit. Mm-hmm. I think Tim Dillon is happy for the exposure, and I think that also speaks to the difference between him and also what you're saying. I mean, Tim Dillon's, he's an entertainer and he's kind of got mixed up in politics and stuff, but he had Candace on a show. He's in it for the clicks. He'll say it himself. Yeah. He wants to reach the widest audience possible. But I think Dave Smith is supposed to have some sort of integrity.
But to be as a brand thing, but there are things bigger than brand, bigger than clicks, bigger than fame, bigger than audience. There are certain basic realms of decency, being charitable, and for something like this, which was a massive tragedy that shook everybody, for her to arrive at this with zero evidence, with all the claims that led up to this, she's brought random crazy people on the show to make claims about things that they saw things. She claimed the French government was trying. She claimed the guy who she brought on, a crazy person, just a crazy person. And then she backs off of that. That's the manipulation tactic she uses. She's like, "We're going to start a fundraiser for you. I thank you so much." And then it came out he was completely, discredited. And she goes, he wanted to come on, so I spoke to him. And she keeps moving the goalposts around. And I think it's just eventually going to end in her just having no audience left. I mean, if you have a bunch of mommy sleuths in their 40s watching the show because it's a fun little soap opera, whatever. But it's just zero principles, zero values, anything. This is the epitome of evil to me.
I think
to profit off the pain of a widow, and for everyone to be judging her like that. Oh, she's wearing a sparkly dress. I'm like, you have to understand. First of all, no one's been through anything like this comparable that anybody could experience, and I don't know. You're dealing with a massive organization left in your hands, and I'm sure feel compelled and responsible to make sure it succeeds. And you're not the person who was the cornerstone of it. Your husband was, and I don't know what decisions are going on behind the scenes, but my God, for people to be so uncharitable, so ungracious, for people to make reaction videos analyzing how the tears are coming down, to me is just speaks to the worst human impulses. What is wrong with human beings? I just don't understand that.
I don't disagree with you that this is evil. Mm-hmm. But I think to her credit, to Candace's credit, I think she has implanted in people's minds questions about Erica as evil or as unsubstantiated as they may be, that even this trailer isn't some kind of damning thing to have your brand connected to. I don't think. I think you're overstating a little bit how damning it is to be connected to this, because I think what she's accomplished is people have gone, Erica Kirk, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I think she has accomplished that.
I think that makes my point even more so. I'm not saying I disagree with you, but I don't think, I think it's almost mainstream to say Israel's genocidal. Maybe, I'm not saying they're right, but it's a mainstream place to be. What you're essentially, but you're making the same point I am, which is, I'm not saying that this trailer is the step too far. I'm saying, I mean, it manifests in a piece of content that illustrates what she's been doing all along. You understand? I'm not saying now that she's made this trailer, oh, I can't believe it. This is the next level. But
you were saying that Dave Smith being associated with this is going to be worrisome to him. I don't know if it is.
I do, because I just think what this trailer is it's the manifestation of all the things leading up to it that have planted in people's minds this seed that's been planted by her, and that is all part of the same evil pattern. I think she's been evil for a long time.
So what's the reaction been? What's the reaction been?
In my feed, from what I've seen, it's a lot of people jumping off the train, and it's continued. It's continued to be that way. Even Dave Smith in an exchange with me on Twitter said, referred to Candace as a conspiracy theorist. So she's a conspiracy theorist, rather than like a truth-seeking person who's speaking truth to power and going against the grain. He designated her that way, which is his sort of way of hinting of like, all right, people have their kooky ideas, whatever. She's into crazy stuff, whatever. Alex Jones is like, she's crazy. She's crazy. I think she's retarded. Like everybody's getting off the train. What I'm just saying is that this trailer is just every once in a while, there are these like very, succinct and like concentrated moments that showcase the project she's been on all along, the grift, the fraud, and ensuing this kind of thing. It's representative of all the things she's been doing. And that doubt that you're talking about, it's insane. I mean, the fact that,
I agree.
I'm saying Israel's genocide, I guess, because people have planted that lie, and she's planted lie after lie. It started immediately after Charlie's death. I remember her talking about the Hamptons, and Charlie was pressured, and they were screaming at him, and Bill Ackman threw him against the wall. And like, I was there. It wasn't like that. And I know it wasn't like that. And so when I saw her do that, and it's one thing when you're talking about things in theory and these abstractions, but when she was talking about an event that I was present at, and I could see her lying in real time and manipulating in real time, it only kept going from there. And it followed the same drug pattern of that dopamine kick you get from provocation and attention. First, it was Charlie had suspicions about Israel. Then there's 12 Israeli cell phones. Okay. Turns out in every one of those cases, like there were students on campus were, how many exchange students from Israel were at University of Utah? You could go through it. You know what I mean? And I think for a long time, people weren't waking up to the fact that she was implanting in people these lies, but she kept going with it. Then she was like, the French government tried to assassinate me. And that weekend she's out at a holiday party, and she just throws that out. And then that just doesn't materialize. So people just move on to the next thing, and has created this fog, this cloud of suspicion, whatever you're talking about, in which something like this can seem like worth exploring, but it's all based on nothing. It's based on pure fabrication, pure lies, dishonesty, deceit, manipulation. That's what's been going on. And so, I guess you're right. Like, maybe not everybody will just say like, she's crazy and she's planted this thing and she's been effective at deceit, distortion, manipulation. All right, that's what she's effective at. I'm not buying it, and I think a lot of people aren't buying it, and I think a lot of people are regretting buying it. I think Megyn Kelly is definitely being like, shit, what do I do? What do I do? My message to Megyn Kelly, I think she's looking in the mirror like crap, because she knows she doubled down on defending Candace and not criticizing her. And also loving Erica Kirk. Now, how's she gonna square that? What my message to her would be, you can come out and just say, listen, it's a tough business I'm in, okay? Trying to build an audience here, and I made a calculation, and I was wrong, and it was stupid, and I compromised my own values and principles to do it. I've been burned a few times. I was burned by Trump. I was burned on NBC, on mainstream media, when I made a stupid joke and apologized for it when I shouldn't have. I wasn't being authentic. I was being disingenuous. Obviously, I thought Candace was crazy, but I was a little worried about losing audience, and I kind of wanted to just stay out of it. I didn't like that people were pressuring me, and I don't like when people pressure me, but in this case, I should have just looked to myself and, stuck to my principles here, and I was wrong, and I apologize for that. If she said that, like, I think she could go a long way. What she shouldn't do, which I think she might do, Megyn Kelly, is say, now that this trailer is out, my opinions have changed about Candace. Initially, I thought she was on the right track, and now I think it's gone too far. Kind of like what Piers did about Israel. Like, I think she's going to try to do that without coming to terms with her behavior and her conduct towards Ben, and kind of taking the wrong side on this, in my opinion. And I think a lot of people are having that question, and they're trying to just duck and cover and say, let's just, I'm not going to talk about her. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just going to move on. I'm just going to be a conservative out there. I don't want to face this. She's clearly done a ton of damage. You want to say, to her credit, she's done a ton of damage within the conservative movement with all these entangling formal alliances and relationships that she's betrayed, and who now feel compromised in criticizing her because they helped build her. And so it makes it very complicated, But hey, I ain't in that. And It's freaking evil, bruh. It's evil. But I think in a way she does the favor for us by increasingly going more mad. And some people say her husband's gay. I think eventually she'll turn on her own husband. Remember, it was Erica Kirk who could stop her and George Farmer, her husband, who could stop her. So what happens when he finally steps in and says, darling, please, stop this, please? No, I'm a woman of God. I don't need a husband. Then she turns on him. Then she'll turn on the Catholic Church. Then she'll turn on God. It's all part of the same pattern.
They'll be very successful. She'll be very successful doing it.
Yeah, blaming God for what's been going on in the world. Maybe she's right about that. But I think she'll turn on every single institution.
And then she'll shrivel up into like a little raisin and just catch on fire,
like Voldemort.
Yeah,
I just think eventually, this stuff just implodes, and you turn and cannibalize your own audience. And if you're a parasite that leeches and lives off of different movements, whether it's doxing people online as a lefty, and then as a conservative firebrand and latching onto that, from PragerU, latching onto the Daily Wire, jumping off the Daily Wire, then latching onto the anti-Israel movement, the Catholic sort of anti-Zionism she's trying to play into. She's parasiting on all these things, and eventually you're going to have nothing to feed you. And that's what's going to happen.
Do you think her only path back into kind of the good graces of mainstream conservatism is to date Shabbos Kestenbaum?
Well, there's talk about a shadchan who I met in Nashville who said, if you're interested...
I'd be very interested in that relationship.
Never say never. All right?
She's got kids, though, I think.
Okay. Listen, co-parenting is possible.
Yeah.
I knew you were going somewhere absurd with that, but I'll take it. I knew. I can always say their tone. Here he goes. What's he going to drop now?
Shabbos. Well, we got to get out of that hole you dug us into of serious.
It was a good way out. Anything else, Michael, for this episode? We've been cooking a little bit.
We good. G. Yeah. Let's check. Hold on. Let's check Patreon. Let's see if we got any new ones this week to
while
call
Michael's
out some of
pulling
our
that up.
patrons.
We do want to thank all the people who've been going over to Patreon and signing up. We appreciate the support. Go over to patreon.com/Ami's House to become a supporter of the show or signing up. Yeah. What do we got?
We have Kay and Alan, unpaid free tier. So I want to give you a lukewarm thank you.
Okay.
But
so
not the full-throated thank you we give.
So we have Jewish patrons joining. Very nice. I kid. But listen, thank you guys so much for watching the show, for subscribing to YouTube, to Patreon. We appreciate it. And tune in next week for next week's episode. Episodes are weekly. And you're watching Ami's House with Ami Kozak and Michael Webber. Thanks for watching.